going to pick up on that, really, aren't we, to start with, Angela? Zelensky saying there was no stray anti-aircraft fire, but he's faced quite a lot of criticism for saying that, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. Of course, this is a Russian or Soviet-made missile, but of course there are lots of Soviet-made missiles being used around the world, in Ukraine as well. And NATO, Poland, most importantly, Washington, all of those, of course, included in NATO, insist that this looks very much like anti-missile defense capabilities in Ukraine, a stray missile which ended up in Poland with the tragic consequences. 2 people died. They say there's no evidence, Jens Stoltenberg says there's no evidence that Russia was preparing any anti-NATO actions, and they are saying that is what the evidence points to. They are very keen for this not to escalate. And most importantly, Poland, which is right on the doorstep of Ukraine, they have been very clear that for them it seems like it was a Ukrainian missile that went astray. Zelensky has an interest, perhaps, in escalating this war. He has long wanted NATO to get involved, and he is insisting. He says, I want to be part of the international investigation. I want to see your evidence, and I insist it was not a stray Ukrainian missile. This has put NATO in quite an awkward position. They're very, very keen for this not to escalate, and so probably are Russia. It's important to note that all through this war, Washington has maintained with Moscow channels of communication to manage risk, in particular to manage nuclear risk. And it's likely that on neither side are they keen for this to escalate. And so Zelensky's position has made things rather difficult for everybody. Some people in Ukraine are a little nervous about Zelensky's position as well. We're hearing reports of some of the Ukrainian people saying, we don't want this to go too far. So we'll see where it takes us. We'll see what happens next. But Zelensky's position will have to be addressed.
I mean, it did seem to be, quite on the sidelines, if you like, of the G20. I mean, they were all meeting there, most of them following Poland. And then all of a sudden, Zelensky comes in and almost sort of, throws chaos into all those reactions from those leaders by making the point that he did.
Indeed. Something very interesting happened at the G20 summit yesterday. Firstly, in the opening declaration from Modi, the Indian leader, he openly talked about Ukraine, said he hoped the path to a ceasefire and an end to war could be found. China didn't address Ukraine in its opening statements, but very importantly, there is evidence of some shifting behind the scenes of positions. India, which until now has been slightly ambiguous, appears to be more firmly judging that the war is not going Russia's way and that perhaps it's not in its interests to continue to back Russia. And even China signed up to a joint declaration at the end saying, and this was Indian wording which had been adopted, we do not want this to be the era of war. China has always said they oppose the use of nuclear weapons, and they've made that very clear to Russia. And China appears to be very slightly shifting, certainly being a little bit less ambiguous. Don't forget, just before the February 24th invasion, Xi and Putin said they had a no-limits friendship. There is a suggestion that China's beginning to lose patience with this, as indeed perhaps is Washington. We see now the Republicans have won control of the House of Representatives. They have made quite significant murmurings that this is costing an awful lot of money. There is perhaps some suggestion that the two biggest world players, China and Washington, are starting to think this has gone on too long. We need to find a way to move it forward. And once China and the United States start to move a little bit closer on their thinking of Ukraine, then that will force positions in Ukraine and in Russia.
Yeah, and talk about positions in Ukraine. I mean, what's the latest position? Obviously, we're mid to soon, late November. Winter is coming. That makes it even more difficult, doesn't it, on the ground?
It does. And at the UN yesterday, the US representative was saying that Russia has failed with its troops to gain control of Ukraine and is therefore attacking its infrastructure and trying to freeze the people of Ukraine into submission. Russia is targeting infrastructure, apparently, and that is against international law. You are not allowed to target civilian infrastructure. They're trying to get the power back on in many parts of Ukraine today. And it is clear that they have changed their strategy and are trying to, as the cold winter approaches, try to really push the ordinary Ukrainian citizens into feeling enough is enough. Russia also has 300,000 extra troops, which were conscripted mostly and have been trained and are now ready for use. There are signs that as they have had to withdraw from the south, we saw they had to withdraw from Kherson, that they are going to concentrate their efforts over the winter in the east. And equally, Ukraine then will have to turn its attention to defending itself on that side. So it's still, it looks a bit like a stalemate, despite recent successes for Ukraine.
We shall see. Angela, thanks very much.